What if the one man who swore he'd never fall in love met someone who wasn't even human? A ruthless CEO boards a luxury cruise to escape his past. But when a mysterious girl rises from the sea, daring to talk back to him, everything he believes about love, pride, and power shatters forever. Hey everyone! Before we dive into today's video, please do subscribe to the channel. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your country or city in the comments below. It truly amazes me how far our community reaches around the world. Alright, now let's begin. The ocean glittered like spilled diamonds beneath the moonlight, but Lucian Dre, billionaire CEO of Dre Tech Industries, saw nothing beautiful about it. He stood at the rail of the massive cruise ship Celestia, champagne untouched in his hands, watching the dark waves swallow their own reflections. Just hours ago, his engagement party had ended in humiliation. His fiancée, a model he treated more like a PR investment, had walked out in front of hundreds of guests, announcing she'd grown tired of being loved like a business deal. Cameras had flashed, board members had whispered. Now the great Lucian Dre was alone, exactly how he preferred it. Women are distractions, and I'm done with them. The sea wind tore at his shirt collar, cold and sharp, as if daring him to prove it. He thought he heard something then, a soft, melodic hum rising from below the ship. At first, Lucian assumed it was the engines, but the sound carried emotion, something painfully human. He leaned over the railing. The ocean shimmered faintly, and then, movement. A figure darted just beneath the surface, graceful and fluid. He blinked, thinking the alcohol was playing tricks on him. What the? The melody grew clearer, a haunting lullaby carried by the wind. For a moment, Lucian felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. Wonder. He shook it off, laughing dryly. Perfect. Now I'm hearing voices from the ocean, he whispered. But then the surface broke. A girl's head emerged, hair long, dark, wet, and glinting with faint blue light. She looked straight at him with eyes the color of storms. "You shouldn't mock the sea," she said softly. Her voice was calm, yet it sliced through him like glass. Lucian froze. He was used to people trembling when they spoke to him, executives, journalists, even royalty. Yet here was some drenched stranger, floating in the middle of the ocean, talking back. "Excuse me?" he snapped. "Who are you and how did you get out here?" The girl tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "Who are you to command the sea? You think money lets you own everything, even the water that carries you?" Lucian's jaw tightened. "I don't have time for riddles. Get a life raft and we'll have you picked up." But she only smiled faintly. "No need." Then, with a slow movement that made his heart stop, she lifted herself halfway out of the water, and the moon revealed the impossible. Her lower body shimmered with silver blue scales, gleaming like polished crystal. "You're..." He couldn't even finish the word. "Real. And you're rude." Lucian stumbled back, gripping the rail. Every rational thought in him screamed that this couldn't be happening, but the evidence rippled before his eyes. A tail, scales, and eyes that looked centuries old. "You expect me to believe this? Mermaids are myths." The girl's lips curved slightly. So is love, yet people still destroy themselves chasing it. Her words struck something raw. Lucian stepped forward, anger rising to mask his confusion. "You don't know anything about me." "I know you're hurting, and you hide it behind power." For the first time in years, Lucian had no reply. He could only stare as she flicked her tail and disappeared beneath the water, leaving behind ripples that glowed faintly before fading into darkness. His chest felt hollow, like she had taken something with her when she vanished. Hours passed, but Lucian couldn't shake the sound of her voice. He stood on the balcony of his private suite, the ocean stretching endlessly below. He told himself it was a hallucination, a trick of exhaustion. Yet when he closed his eyes, he saw her eyes, piercing, unafraid, ancient. "You're rude." The way she had said it, like she wasn't afraid of him, like she saw him, cut deeper than his ex-fiance's betrayal. Lucian Dre, the man who rejected all women, had met one who didn't care who he was, and that was exactly why he couldn't stop thinking about her. Down below, in the black water, something shimmered once more. A soft echo of that same song drifted through the air, tugging at the edges of his heart. He didn't know it yet, but his life, his rules, and his heart were no longer his own. The sea had claimed them. Lucian Dre didn't sleep that night. The cruise ship glided smoothly through the Pacific, but his mind churned like a storm. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard that haunting melody again, the one from the water. He tried drowning it out with music, then whiskey, but it returned, softer, closer. "You're rude." The words looped in his head until they became a strange comfort. At dawn, he found himself standing by the railing again, the sea painted gold by the rising sun. Passengers were still asleep, and for the first time in years, Lucian felt small. The endless horizon mocked his control. He could buy countries, silence scandals, and crush competition. But he couldn't command whatever had looked him in the eye last night and dared him to feel. The wind was warm now, but something inside him felt colder than ever. As the sky burned orange, movement rippled below. Lucian leaned forward, half expecting the same delusion. But this time, there was no mistaking it. She was there, her silhouette gliding beneath the waves like a streak of living light. "No," he muttered, heart pounding. "It's impossible." Yet when she surfaced, her wet hair clung to her shoulders like ribbons of ink, and her tail shimmered with scales that caught the sunlight like shattered sapphires. She didn't sing this time. She just watched him. He took a shaky step forward. "Why are you following me?" he asked, trying to sound composed. The mermaid tilted her head. "Why are you still here?" she replied. "Men like you don't look at the sea twice unless there's something to take from it." Her voice wasn't mocking, just curious. "You don't know me," he shot back. "No," she said softly, "but I want to." Lucian laughed bitterly. "You want to know me? You have no idea who I am." She smiled faintly, a glimmer of light touching her lips. "That's why it's interesting." Her tail flicked, sending droplets cascading up like diamonds in the air. "Tell me, Lucian Dre," she said, and his stomach twisted hearing his name from her mouth. "Do you rule your world the same way you try to rule the waves?" He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Nobody ever talked to him this way, not without consequence. Yet he couldn't bring himself to walk away. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. The girl hesitated, her gaze flickering. "Narina," she said at last. "Daughter of the tides." The words rolled like a secret she hadn't shared in centuries. "Narina," he repeated, testing the sound. "Beautiful name." She looked down, almost shy. "Don't use words you don't mean." He should have left right then, should have called security, should have convinced himself it was madness. But instead, Lucian stayed, watching her, speaking to her, forgetting who he was supposed to be. The ship's engines hummed below, but the world felt still, just the two of them, suspended between sky and sea. "Why do you live out here?" he asked. Narina's expression darkened. "Because humans ruin everything they touch. You build, you burn, and you call it progress. The ocean used to sing, now it screams." Her voice trembled, and for the first time he saw pain behind her calm. "So you hate us?" "No," she replied. "I pity you." The honesty in her words struck like lightning. He wanted to argue, to prove her wrong, but instead he whispered, "Maybe you should." A sharp wind rose, scattering foam across the surface. Narina looked toward the horizon. "You should go," she said suddenly. "They'll see me soon." "Who?" he asked, stepping closer to the rail. Others like me, she said softly. They don't trust your kind. And what about you? Lucian asked. Do you? Her gaze met his, steady and unreadable. I don't know yet. Then she dove, vanishing beneath the waves, leaving only a swirl of silver where she'd been. Lucian stayed at the railing, eyes fixed on the sea. For the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking about profits or losses or power. He was thinking about her, about a girl who defied him, who saw through him, and who lived in a world he could never own. And somehow, that made him want her even more. Lucian Dre had never waited for anyone. People waited for him. Boardrooms, governments, entire industries bending to his schedule. Yet now he found himself by the same railing every morning, searching the endless blue for a glimpse of silver scales. Days passed. The Celestia drifted farther from shore, and passengers enjoyed the pool deck, champagne bars, and private cinemas. But Lucian stood apart, haunted. He didn't understand it. That mermaid, Narina, had said barely a dozen words to him. Yet those words had unraveled something inside him he'd spent years tightening. His assistant, Cole, noticed. You're distracted, sir, he said during breakfast on the balcony. Should I cancel your meetings in Singapore? Lucian's spoon clinked against the untouched coffee cup. No, he muttered. I just need air. But what he really needed was her, the girl from the sea who talked back without fear. That night, the ocean was black glass. The stars scattered across it like spilled salt, and Lucian leaned against the rail once more, alone. Then he heard it, a soft hum weaving through the wind. His chest tightened. Narina? He called softly. The melody stopped. Then, from below, a shimmer of movement. Her head broke the surface, her eyes glowing faintly like stormlight reflected in water. You shouldn't call my name, she said. Why not? Lucian asked, stepping closer. Names have power, she replied, especially at sea. Her voice carried sadness this time, not defiance. You came back, he said. I had questions. Humans always do, she smiled faintly. But you never listened to the answers. The words stung more than he expected. Try me, he said quietly. Ask then, she whispered, her tone daring him. Ask what you really want to know. He hesitated. For a man who had interrogated presidents and investors, he suddenly didn't know what to say. Why me? He finally asked. Out of all the people on this ship, why talk to me? Narina's gaze softened. Because you were the only one looking at the sea instead of yourself. You carry silence inside you. It calls to us. Her words chilled him. Us? He asked. There are more of you? She nodded faintly. Many. But few who risk being seen. She glanced toward the deeper dark, as if something down there was listening. You're afraid, Lucian said. Not of me, of them. Narina's eyes flicked to his. Fear keeps us alive, she whispered. It's pride that kills. Her voice trembled. You of all people should understand that. Lucian clenched his fists, her words slicing through years of practiced armor. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but the truth is, she was right. His pride had destroyed every relationship he'd ever touched. Deals, friendships, love, they all broke under the weight of his control. And now, standing above an impossible creature who saw through his soul, he felt human. You speak like you've lived forever, he murmured. Narina smiled sadly. Long enough to know what endings look like. Her eyes caught the light, and for a moment, Lucian saw something. Pain, loss, memory. You've loved before, he said softly. Her smile faded. Once. A sailor, centuries ago. He promised to return. He never did. The silence between them thickened with salt and grief. "He didn't deserve you," Lucian said, surprising himself. Narina met his gaze. "And what makes you think you do?" Her words burned, but instead of anger, Lucian felt something else. Humility. He didn't have an answer. For the first time, silence felt heavy on his tongue. Narina drifted closer, her tail shimmering beneath the surface. "You're not what I expected," she whispered. "Most men would have turned me in or fled." "I've noticed." Her hand broke the surface then, slender, trembling, human. For a heartbeat, he almost reached out. But before his fingers could touch hers, a massive splash echoed nearby. Narina's expression changed instantly. Fear. "Go inside," she said urgently. "What is it?" "They're watching," she hissed, eyes darting toward the dark waves. Then she vanished, faster than a blink, leaving Lucian drenched and alone. The wind howled through the railings, and a single thought echoed in his chest. Who's watching her? And why does she sound afraid? By morning, the Celestia was quiet again, but Lucien Dre wasn't. He couldn't shake the sound of that splash, the look of fear that had crossed Narina's face before she vanished. He paced his suite, every thought clashing like storm waves in his skull. What did she mean, "they're watching"? Who were they? He stared out through the glass balcony doors, the sun glinting off a calm sea that suddenly felt deceptive. Cole entered with a daily itinerary, but Lucien barely noticed. "Sir?" his assistant asked. "Are you all right?" Lucien turned sharply. "Change the ship's route," he said. Cole blinked. "Sir, that's impossible. It's pre-approved." "Then unapprove it," Lucien growled. "We're sailing through waters we shouldn't be." Cole hesitated, but one look at Lucien's eyes told him this wasn't a business order. It was instinct. Something in the water was watching, and Lucien could feel it. That evening, the ship passed through a stretch of unusually still water. The ocean looked black and glassy like oil, and even the wind had stopped. Lucien stood at the bow, his pulse uneasy. "Narina," he whispered, scanning the dark. No answer, just silence. Thick, eerie, endless. Then from below came a faint echo. "Lucien!" His heart jumped. It wasn't the same soft voice from before. It was weaker, strained. "Where are you?" he called out, leaning dangerously far over the railing. The water stirred, and she appeared. But her face was pale, her glow dim. "You shouldn't have called me," she said softly. "You drew their attention." "Whose attention?" Lucien demanded. Her eyes flickered toward the depths. "The deep court. They rule below. They don't like when we speak to your kind." Her voice broke. "They're already coming." As soon as the words left her lips, the ocean began to move. Waves rose without wind, rolling higher and higher until the ship started to sway. Alarms echoed from the decks above as passengers screamed. Lucien gripped the railing, the storm blindingly sudden. "Narina!" he shouted, but she was already diving, her tail flashing once before vanishing into the chaos. Thunder cracked. Rain slammed down in sheets. Cole rushed out from below deck, shouting, "Sir, get inside, it's not safe." But Lucien couldn't move. Something in the storm felt alive, intentional. Lightning tore through the clouds, illuminating monstrous shadows beneath the waves. Huge, sinuous shapes twisted below, glowing faintly with eerie light. It wasn't just a storm. It was a warning. Whatever ruled the depths had risen, and it wanted him gone. The crew fought to steady the ship, and Lucien finally stumbled into his cabin, drenched and shaken. He gripped the counter, breathing hard. Logic screamed that he was losing his mind, that storms happen, that mermaids don't exist. But he knew what he saw. He could still feel Narina's fear in his bones. He turned to Cole, who was wiping rain from his face. "Cole," he said, voice low, "if anything happens to me, make sure the ship keeps heading west. Don't stop." Cole frowned. "Sir, what are you planning?" Lucien glanced back toward the balcony where the storm still raged. I'm going to find her. Find who? The girl the ocean doesn't want me to meet. Before Cole could protest, Lucien threw on a raincoat and stepped back into the chaos, toward the one place everyone else was running from. Lightning flared again, and for a split second, Lucien saw them. Eyes in the waves. Dozens of them. Cold, ancient, unblinking. They watched him from beneath the surface as if measuring his worth. He shouted into the storm, I'm not leaving until I see her. The wind howled in reply. Then through the wall of rain, a shape rose. Not Narina, something much larger. A dark figure with a crown of coral and skinned like molten stone. Its voice rumbled like thunder. You dare speak her name? It bellowed. The sound shook the ship. Lucien stumbled, gripping the rail. Who are you? He shouted back. The creature's eyes glowed brighter. The one who guards what your world forgets, it growled. Leave, land-born king of greed, or drown with your pride. And then, just as suddenly as it came, the storm stopped. The sea stilled. But Lucien knew one thing for sure. The ocean had warned him once. It wouldn't warn him again. The morning after the storm felt unreal. The sky was calm, painted in soft peach light, and the ocean glittered like nothing had happened. But Lucien Dre knew better. The deck crew whispered about freak weather and impossible swells, yet none could explain why the sea itself had seemed angry. Lucien stood at the stern, his eyes locked on the fading horizon. He'd seen something in that storm, something vast, intelligent, and ancient. He still heard its voice echoing in his skull, leave, land-born king of greed. But how could he leave when Narina might be out there, in danger? When everyone else saw calm water, he saw warning. You're quiet this morning, sir, Cole said, approaching cautiously. Lucien didn't answer. He just whispered, the ocean doesn't forget. Somewhere below, he could almost feel it breathing, watching, waiting. By afternoon, the passengers began to relax again. Music returned to the pool deck, and the clinking of glasses echoed through the air. But Lucien noticed something off. A man he didn't recognize was standing near the railing, watching him. Tall, pale, dressed in a white suit that somehow stayed spotless despite the salt in the air. His hair was silver, eyes an impossible shade of turquoise. When Lucien moved, so did he, mirroring every step. Finally, Lucien turned. Can I help you? He asked. The man smiled thinly. I believe you already have. His voice was too calm, too smooth. You've drawn attention from places best left unseen. Lucien's gut tightened. Who are you? The man smiled in waver. A messenger, he said, from below. Then, leaning closer so only Lucien could hear, he whispered, You've spoken with one of ours, Narina of the Tide. Lucien froze. The man's eyes glinted. The deep court wants to speak with you. Lucien's instinct screamed danger. I don't take meetings without details, he said sharply. The man chuckled, a hollow melodic sound that didn't belong to human lungs. He misunderstands, he said. This isn't a meeting you accept. It's one you survive. He slipped something into Lucien's palm, a small, smooth shell, cold as ice. At sunset, hold this above the water. She'll come. Who? Lucien demanded, but the man was already turning away. You have been warned. He disappeared into the crowd like a shadow dissolving in light. When Lucien opened his hand, he saw that the shell shimmered faintly, swirling with an inner glow. Cole approached, frowning. Sir, you okay? Lucien quickly pocketed it. Fine, he lied. But his pulse betrayed him. Sunset. The deep court wanted him to summon her. It was either a trap or the only way to see Narina again. As the sun sank into the horizon, Lucien returned to the bow. The air felt heavy, charged. He pulled the shell from his pocket and held it above the water. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the ocean moved. The water below began to glow faintly, and the hum of a song drifted up, a melody he recognized instantly. "Narina," he whispered. She surfaced, her expression torn between relief and anger. "You shouldn't have come. You called me with their shell. Do you know what that means?" Lucien shook his head. "I just needed to see you." Her eyes darkened. "You've summoned their attention, Lucien. The deep court doesn't invite, they command. You're already inside their game." "Then I'll play, if it means keeping you safe." Narina's voice trembled. "You don't understand. The deep court doesn't forgive." The waves around them began to churn, glowing brighter. Narina's hair floated like silk in the water, her voice shaking. "You have to go before they reach you." But Lucien leaned closer, defiant. "Tell me what they are." She hesitated, torn between fear and trust. "They're the ones who guard the ocean's laws. They decide who lives and who drowns." Her gaze softened, a flash of emotion breaking through her fear. "They think I'm breaking our oldest rule by speaking to you." Lightning flickered across the horizon, distant but growing. "Then run," she urged, "before they rise." But Lucien didn't move. "I don't run from anyone." "Then you'll drown like the rest," she said sadly, and before he could reply, she dove, leaving the glowing shell to crumble to dust in his palm as thunder rolled across the waves. That night, Lucien Dre couldn't breathe, not because of the sea air, but because of the truth Narina had whispered before vanishing. "They think I'm breaking our oldest rule." He sat alone in his suite, the shredded remnants of the glowing shell still on his desk. It had turned black the moment Narina disappeared, as if burned from the inside out. Outside, the ocean was calm again, but calm now felt like a lie. Every instinct told him he had stepped into something far older and far more dangerous than himself. He poured whiskey into a glass, but his hands were shaking. The ice clinked like tiny warnings. "You lost it, Dre," he muttered to himself. "Talking to mermaids, summoning storms." Yet, when he closed his eyes, he saw her, Narina's eyes, her trembling voice, her fear. Something deep inside him whispered that she was in danger, and that he was the cause. The Celestia sailed on toward open waters, the passengers oblivious to the invisible storm brewing below. But Lucien couldn't ignore it. Every night he heard the hum again, the song. Softer now, sadder, like a voice calling from miles beneath the waves. He'd stand on the balcony long past midnight, staring into the black water until it seemed to move on its own. One night, when the moonlight painted silver veins across the sea, he saw something strange. Faint lines glowing beneath the ship, forming a circle. "No," he whispered, stepping closer to the edge. The circle pulsed, almost like a heartbeat. Then, before he could blink, the world tilted. The deck beneath him seemed to vanish, and the ocean rose, pulling him down. Cold swallowed him whole. He didn't scream. He couldn't. The last thing he heard before the world went silent was a voice whispering through the water. "You were warned." Lucien's lungs burned as he sank deeper and deeper. The light above faded until only the cold blue darkness remained. He tried to fight, to swim, but something unseen was dragging him, smooth, unstoppable. Then, just as his strength began to fail, arms wrapped around him. A glow cut through the dark, soft, pure, and familiar. Narina. Her face appeared inches from his, her hair floating like a halo. "You shouldn't be here," she cried, her voice echoing in his mind instead of his ears. He'll die. He reached for her hand, but his vision blurred. You came, he whispered weakly. Her tears shimmered, dissolving into the sea. Hold on, she said, her voice breaking. She pressed her lips to his, sharing her breath, her life. Warmth flooded his chest as oxygen filled his lungs. The pain faded. The ocean no longer felt like it was killing him. It felt like it was claiming him. When Lucien opened his eyes again, he was no longer sinking. He was floating in a place beyond reason. Light moved through the water like fireflies. Coral towers glowed faintly in the distance, and silver schools of fish darted around spiraling columns of stone. It was like an underwater city carved by dreams. Narina floated before him, her expression filled with relief and fear. Where are we? He asked, though his voice came out like thought instead of sound. Between worlds, she answered softly. The deep court's boundary. No human has crossed it in centuries. Then why am I alive? He asked. Because I broke their law, she whispered. Her gaze trembled as she touched his face. I gave you breath meant only for the seaborn. The realization hit him like a wave. You risked everything for me. She nodded. They'll come for both of us now. A low rumble echoed for the water, deep and distant. Narina's expression changed instantly. They felt it, she whispered. The boundary's been broken. In the distance, the coral towers began to darken, their glow fading as shadows slithered through them. Who? He asked. The deep court, she said, grabbing his hand. We have to go. Where? Anywhere they can't find you. She pulled him through a forest of glowing seaweed, their strands brushing against his skin like whispers. Lucien could barely keep up. His body felt lighter, almost adapted. When he looked down, his reflection in the glassy surface below rippled strangely. His eyes, once dark, now shimmered faintly with blue light. He wasn't sure what was happening to him. All he knew was this. The deeper he followed her, the louder the ocean seemed to whisper his name. And somewhere in that voice, he could hear it. The beginning of something unstoppable. Narina led Lucien through a canyon of silver coral until they reached a glowing cave tucked beneath a rock arch. Inside, the water shimmered with warm light, and floating crystals pulsed softly, illuminating carvings along the walls, faces of merfolk long gone. Lucien floated beside her, his chest still burning with questions. What is this place? He asked. The Hollow of Tides, she replied quietly. A refuge for those who broke the court's law. No one comes here anymore. Her fingers brushed against one of the carvings, a mermaid with sorrowful eyes. My mother once hid here too, she added. Lucien studied her, hearing the ache in her voice. You broke their law to save me, he said. But why me? Narina's gaze flickered, torn between fear and something softer. Because you listened, she said at last. Because you saw me, not a creature, you saw me. The silence between them grew deep enough to drown in. Narina turned away and began tracing symbols along the cave wall. Our world isn't what the old stories tell, she whispered. Merfolk were once free to love humans, but long ago, a human king betrayed the sea. He captured one of us, my ancestor, and used her song to rule. So the court banned all contact. They said human hearts bring ruin. Lucien's throat tightened. And yet you saved one, he said quietly. Maybe that's the ruin they feared, she replied bitterly. Her tail flicked, sending trails of light through the water. Love isn't forbidden because it's weak, it's forbidden because it's stronger than their control. Lucian swam closer, the distance between them shrinking like a tide going out. So now they'll punish you? He asked. She met his gaze, unflinching. No, they'll punish us. For the first time, fear shone in her eyes, not for herself, but for him. Lucian reached for her hand, and a current of warmth surged between them, electric, alive. The glowing veins on his arms brightened, matching the pulse of the sea around him. Narina gasped. "It's happening," she whispered. "What's happening?" "The sea's mark. When I gave you breath, I gave you part of myself. The ocean recognizes you now." Lucian stared at his reflection in a pool of still water. His eyes gleamed like liquid sapphire, his skin faintly luminous. "So, I'm becoming one of you?" Narina hesitated, then nodded. "Halfway, maybe. Enough for them to hunt you." "Then we fight," he said. But she shook her head. "You don't understand. They don't fight. They erase." Her voice trembled as she swam closer, pressing her forehead to his. "I should have let you drown," she whispered painfully. "But I couldn't. You made me remember what it means to care." Suddenly, the cave shuddered. The glowing crystals dimmed, their light flickering like dying stars. Narina stiffened. "They found us," she breathed. The water outside darkened as shadows moved past the entrance, sleek, fast, disciplined. A deep, resonant hum filled the sea, shaking Lucian's chest. It wasn't sound, it was command. "Return what you've stolen." Narina's grip on his arm tightened. "Don't listen to them," she said, her voice shaking. "They can't take what's freely given." "What are they saying?" Lucian asked. "They want the bond broken," she said, tears streaming upward in the water. "But if it breaks, you die." The hum grew louder, vibrating through the cave. Cracks formed in the coral walls. Narina looked at Lucian like it was the last time she'd ever see him. She whispered, "Promise me. Whatever happens, don't let them make you forget me." Lucian took her face in his hands, his touch steady despite the chaos around them. "If the world above forgot you, I'd still remember you," he said. "If the ocean swallowed every word you ever spoke, I'd still hear your voice." The hum turned into a roar, and water currents spiraled violently through the cave. Narina's tail coiled around his leg instinctively, anchoring them both as light exploded outside. The cave walls began to collapse. "Go! You'll drown!" "Not without you," he said, gripping her tighter. The sea seemed to freeze for a heartbeat, the kind of silence before everything changes. Then, in the shimmering dark, Lucian whispered, "If love is a curse, I'll take it." The light consumed them both and the world turned white. Somewhere beyond the blinding glow, a new voice echoed through the deep. "The human has chosen. Let the sea decide his fate." Lucian woke to the sound of chains echoing through water. The world around him glowed blue and cold. He was suspended inside a shimmering sphere of light, bound by tendrils of living coral that pulsed like veins. All around him, shadowy figures watched in silence, hundreds of merfolk, their eyes gleaming like distant moons. At the center of them all sat the deep court. They were magnificent and terrifying, ancient beings with tails like black glass, their crowns woven from coral and pearls. Narina knelt below them, her wrists bound, her head bowed. "You've brought shame upon your kind," said the High Morel, his voice rolling like thunder through the deep. Narina didn't lift her head. "If compassion is shame, then I accept it." The crowd rippled with gasps. The High Morel turned his gaze on Lucian. "And you, landborn? You breathe our water, carry our light, and corrupt our blood. For this, the sea demands balance." Lucian struggled against his bonds, the coral tightening with every move. "She saved my life," he shouted. "If that's a crime, then your laws are cruel." The High Morel's eyes glowed brighter. "Our laws preserve the deep from chaos. Humans forget, destroy, consume, always. She defied the balance." Narina looked up, her voice trembling but unbroken. No, I restored it. The court stirred, uneasy. He was drowning, helpless. I gave him a breath, not a weapon. You fear what you can't control. Another counselor hissed, her tail flicking. And what if he learns our secrets? What if he brings others? Lucien met their eyes one by one. You think humans are all monsters? He said, voice steady despite the pressure crushing his chest. Maybe you're right. But some of us would rather protect something beautiful than destroy it. The room fell silent, the sea itself listening. The high morel rose, his massive tail unfurling behind him. Then let the sea decide if your words are truth or illusion, he declared. The coral sphere around Lucien dissolved, and the floor beneath him vanished. He plunged downward into a trench that seemed bottomless. The water grew darker, colder, heavier with every heartbeat. Voices whispered in the current, his fears, his regrets, his failures. You can't love what you don't understand. You will lose her like you lost everything else. He clutched his chest, choking on doubt. Then he saw her, Narina's light, faint but steady, drifting far above him. Lucien! Her voice echoed in his mind, soft and breaking. Remember what's real. The whispers turned into screams, but he closed his eyes and focused on her face, her song. The darkness recoiled, the sea brightened, and when he opened his eyes again, the water itself seemed to bow around him. When Lucien emerged from the trench, the merfolk stared in silence. The glow around his body had changed. It pulsed in rhythm with the ocean itself. The high morel studied him with narrowed eyes. The sea has chosen, he said slowly. The bond cannot be undone. Narina gasped, her eyes wide. He's one of us now. Not one of us, Morel corrected. A bridge between two worlds. The council murmured, uncertain whether to see that as blessing or blasphemy. But know this, human, Morel continued, his tone grave. Every tide has a cost. You may walk our depths, but you can never walk your land again. Lucien's heart pounded. He looked at Narina, her eyes filled with both joy and fear. He had won his life, but lost his world. Slowly he nodded. Then I'll stay where she breathes. Narina's tears turned to pearls that drifted upward like stars. The court dissolved, their lights fading into the depths. Only Narina and Lucien remained, floating in the quiet after the storm. She touched his face, her hand trembling. You gave up everything. For me? He smiled faintly. I didn't lose everything. I found you. Her tail brushed against his leg, soft as silk. But you never see the sky again, she said sadly. Lucien looked upward at the faint silver glow of the surface far above him. Maybe the sky was never where I belonged. Narina's heart twisted at his words, half joy, half sorrow. The ocean hummed around them, almost approving. Then from the shadows, a new sound arose, a deep, steady pulse, older than the sea itself. Narina froze. That can't be, she whispered. What is it? Lucien asked. Her eyes darkened. The heart of the abyss. It only beats when something ancient awakens, or when something powerful dies. The water trembled. It wasn't the quiet rhythm of the tides anymore. It was a heartbeat. Slow, heavy, ancient. The entire sea seemed to move with it. Lucien felt it in his bones, a vibration older than language. Narina's face had gone pale, her tail flicking nervously as the current thickened around them. We have to go, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Now. Lucien looked upward, but the path that led back toward the court shimmered and dissolved, swallowed by dark currents. What is it? He demanded. Narina turned, eyes glinting with fear. The heart of the abyss. It was sealed centuries ago by the first merfolk. They said it's where the ocean keeps its rage, where all broken oaths go to die. Another pulse thundered through the deep, sending waves of pressure that cracked nearby coral towers. Lucian winced as his glowing marks flared painfully. The sea was waking up, and it was calling his name. The water around them began to spin, a massive vortex forming beneath their feet. Nerina tried to pull Lucian away, but the current grabbed them both, dragging them downward into the unknown. The light vanished. All that remained was motion, violent, endless motion. Lucian held tightly to her hands as they tumbled through black water that burned like ice. When they finally stopped, they hovered above a vast chasm glowing red at its edges. The ocean floor had split open like a wound, and from within came a pulse that echoed like a heartbeat in pain. Strange symbols glowed on the rocks, each one trembling as though alive. Nerina stared in horror. "It's feeding on you," she breathed. "Your mark, your bond, it's waking the heart." Lucian's skin glowed brighter, veins of blue lightning running across his chest. "Then how do I stop it?" "You can't, not unless you break the bond. And that means killing yourself." Before Lucian could answer, a voice filled the water, not like a sound, but like a feeling crawling inside his mind. "Child of two worlds, why do you resist me?" The water shimmered, and a shape began to form within the chasm. A colossal figure, its eyes burning white, its body made of shadow and storm. Nerina gasped. "The Abyssal King," she whispered. "The one who betrayed the Sea Queen, the first to love a human." Lucian's chest tightened. "He's like me." "No," Nerina said, trembling. "He's what you become if you let the ocean own your soul." The figure smiled faintly, its face ancient and kind and terrifying all at once. "You are bound to her by defiance," it said. "So was I. And for that, they buried me here. But you can free us both." "How?" Lucian asked. "Choose." The voice echoed through the deep. "Love her or save her." The chasm began to quake, glowing brighter as cracks spread through the sea floor. Nerina clutched Lucian's arm, her voice breaking. "Don't listen to him," she cried. "He wants your life." "He wants freedom," Lucian said, staring into the abyss. "Maybe he's not wrong." "He is wrong," she screamed. "If he rises, the ocean will drown the world." The red light flickered between them, their faces pale and desperate. Lucian's mark flared, bright enough to light the dark. If I don't do something, he'll destroy everything anyway." Nerina's hand cupped his face, trembling. "Then let him. Let the sea take me, not you." Lucian shook his head. "You saved me once. I can't let you die for me again." He kissed her forehead gently. "I choose love." The instant the words left his lips, the entire ocean exploded in light, white, burning, endless. The abyss screamed and the sea roared like thunder. When the light faded, the water was still, the chasm had closed. But the silence that followed was not peace. It was waiting. Nerina floated in front of him, eyes filled with tears and terror. "What did you do?" she whispered. Lucian's glow had changed, no longer blue, but gold, radiating outward in waves. "I didn't free him," Lucian said softly. "I took his place." The ocean around them began to hum again, not with rage, but with sorrow. The symbols on the rocks dimmed, the pulse slowing. Nerina reached for him, her hands trembling. "No, no, you can't leave me." Lucian smiled faintly, brushing her cheek. "You once said love is stronger than their control. Now it's stronger than death." As the glow consumed him, Nerina screamed his name, her voice echoing through the deep.
But Lucian was already fading, his body dissolving into light, sinking toward the sealed chasm below. The ocean had claimed its new guardian.
For days, the ocean did not move. No tides, no current, not even the songs of the whales. Narina drifted alone in the stilled water, the world around her muted and gray. The light that once danced through the sea had vanished with Lucian's glow. Coral reefs dulled, the fish hid in the crevices, and the deep court itself remained silent, their judgment halls empty. She swam to where the chasm had sealed shut, her trembling hand brushing the smooth rock now covered in golden scars. He's gone, she told herself, but her heart refused to believe it. When she closed her eyes, she could still feel his warmth, the way his heartbeat had matched the rhythm of the sea. You can't just disappear, she whispered into the deep, her voice breaking. You promised you'd stay. But the only answer was the soft ripple of her own tears turning to pearls that drifted slowly toward the dark. Weeks passed. Narina wandered through the ruins of coral cities, through tunnels lit only by her fading bioluminescence. She could hear whispers, fragments of human voices in the currents above. The surface was moving again. Life was returning, but the sea remained hollow without him. One night, she rose to the surface for the first time since the trial. The sky was vast and sharp with stars. She had never realized how much she had missed the wind on her skin. The moon reflected across the still ocean like liquid glass. And there, on the horizon, she saw it, the Celestia, adrift, empty and half-sunk. Her chest ached as memories flooded back, the balcony, the laughter, the storm. She swam closer and climbed onto the shattered deck, her wet hair clinging to her skin. Everything smelled like him. His jacket lay near the rail, torn and soaked, but she wrapped it around herself anyway. "You're still here," she whispered. As Narina sat there beneath the moonlight, a strange warmth spread through her chest. The sea below her began to glow faintly. Gold, not blue. Her eyes widened. "Lucian," she breathed. The glow pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Then, softly, his voice echoed in her mind, distant and gentle. "Narina," she gasped, tears blurring her vision. "Where are you?" "Below, always below. But part of me lives in you now." She looked down at her hands. They were glowing faintly, veins shimmering with the same golden light that had once surrounded him. "You gave it to me," she whispered. "No," the voice replied tenderly. "You earned it. You saved me from myself." "Then come back," she begged. Silence followed. Then softly, "The sea has no end, Narina. Neither does love. You'll understand soon." The light faded, leaving her trembling and breathless. Somewhere deep within, she could feel his heartbeat. Slow, steady, waiting. The next dawn, the sea began to move again. Waves rose and fell like sighs of relief. Dolphins sang. Coral began to glow once more. Narina could feel it, the balance returning. But with every surge of power that flowed through her, the ache in her heart grew. The gold light inside her responded to her emotions. When she cried, the sea shimmered. When she smiled faintly, it calmed. She realized what Lucian had meant. He hadn't died. He had merged with the ocean, binding his life to hers. Wherever she swam, the sea followed her mood, echoing her soul. The deep court reappeared, their faces somber. "The human sacrifice restored the balance," said the High Morel, "but it has made you something we cannot control." Narina's hair drifted like ink in the current, her eyes glowing gold. "Then, perhaps, you were never meant to." The sea itself seemed to bow at her words. Days turned into weeks, and stories began to spread among sailors. They spoke of a golden-haired woman who appeared on moonlit nights, her voice calming storms and healing the sick. Some said she was a goddess. Others whispered she was a curse. Narina never corrected them. She would rise to the surface sometimes, sit on the remains of the Celestia, and watch the stars that looked like pieces of his eyes. "You gave me your world," she murmured one night. "Now I'll protect both." The sea responded with a gentle wave that touched her fingers. She smiled faintly. Though she was alone, she no longer felt empty. The bond between them was not broken. It had evolved. Somewhere beneath the endless deep, Lucian's voice whispered through the current, "I'm still here." Narina looked out at the horizon. "I know," she said softly, her golden glow reflecting across the waves. Months passed, and Narina's legend spread far beyond the sea. Fishermen from Greece to Morocco spoke of a glowing woman who sang to the ocean and calmed the storms. Some called her the spirit of mercy, others the witch of the deep. Her song brought peace to the water, but fear to the hearts of men. Ships began following her glow, desperate to see the miracle for themselves. Yet every time Narina surfaced, she felt it, the strange pull of human curiosity turning into greed. "They're coming too close," she whispered one night, watching distant ships circle like moths around her golden light. The ocean beneath her stirred uneasily, sensing her tension. Ever since Lucian's sacrifice, the sea had become tied to her emotions, obedient but unpredictable. One wrong feeling, and the tides could rise without warning. Narina pressed a trembling hand to her heart. "Stay calm," she whispered to herself, "or they'll drown for it." That night, the deep court came to her again, no longer cold, but cautious. The high morel appeared through a swirl of dark current, his crown dimmed to a dull silver. "Child of light," he said, voice echoing through the waves. "Your power grows without measure. The surface world fears you. Even the sea begins to tremble beneath your will." Narina turned slowly, her eyes golden and unblinking. "You fear me too," she said. Morel hesitated. "We fear imbalance. The ocean thrives on rhythm, not domination." "I never asked for this," she said, her voice trembling. "He gave me his light. I only carry it." "Yet it burns brighter than his ever did," Morel murmured. The words stung. "What do you want from me?" he said. "To choose. Either return the power to the deep, or let it consume both worlds." Narina's chest tightened. "And if I refuse?" Morel's gaze darkened. "Then both realms will drown." Days later, the first golden storm appeared. The sky above the Atlantic turned the color of molten glass. Ships were tossed like toys, their radios filled with static and strange echoes, snatches of a woman's song. Narina hovered below the chaos, struggling to calm the raging water. "Stop!" she cried, clutching her chest as the sea surged higher. But her emotions betrayed her. Every wave mirrored her fear, her anger, her grief. "Lucian, please help me control it." The wind stilled slightly, as if listening. A faint warmth wrapped around her, steadying her pulse. The golden light dimmed. Slowly, the sea began to calm. When the storm finally broke, she floated there trembling, half relieved, half horrified. The sailors who survived whispered that they saw her eyes glowing through the waves, watching them in silence. They didn't see a savior. They saw a warning. And word spread fast. Weeks later, Narina surfaced near a research vessel flying the insignia of the Dre Corporation, the very empire Lucian had built. The irony cut deep. Humans were scanning the ocean floor, chasing the golden glow. "They're looking for him," she murmured bitterly, "but he's not where they can reach." She rose from the depths, her golden aura illuminating the hull. The crew gasped as her head broke the surface, her hair glowing, her eyes reflecting the dawn. "What are you?" one man whispered, stepping back.
The reason you're still alive, she replied softly. Turn back. The sea is not yours to claim. We're not leaving, another shouted. You're sitting on power that belongs to the world. Her heart sunk. Power. That's all they saw. With a wave of her hand, the sea rose around the ship, not to destroy, but to push them back. Tell your world the sea already has a king, she said, voice echoing like thunder. That night, Narina returned to the deep, exhausted and heartsick. The ocean glowed faintly around her, restless and alive. The deep court watched from the shadows, silent and wary. They'll come again, Morel warned. Humans never stop. Then neither will I, she said quietly. If they want to touch the sea, they'll have to face its heart. Morel's expression softened. You're becoming what he was meant to be. Narina turned toward the horizon, her voice barely a whisper. No, I'm becoming what he believed I could be. Above, lightning cracked across the clouds, golden, not white. The world was changing. The sea and sky no longer belonged to separate realms. And though Narina's power glowed brighter than ever, her heart still carried the ache of one truth. The more she became like him, the farther she drifted from the woman he had fallen in love with.
The world changed overnight. Satellites captured impossible images, waves glowing gold in the dark, whirlpools forming and vanishing in seconds, coastlines shimmering like liquid sunlight. Governments panicked. Scientists called it a bioluminescent anomaly, but the military called it an act of war. Narina floated miles beneath the surface, her golden light pulsing faintly through the abyss. They'll come, Morel warned. They always come when they fear what they don't understand. Narina's voice was calm, but her heart trembled. Then let them. The ocean has endured every empire that ever rose. She turned toward the horizon, her eyes glinting like molten amber. If they bring weapons, they'll learn what it means to challenge the sea. Yet, even as she spoke, a single tear slipped free, vanishing into the current. Because deep down, she still remembered the warmth of human touch, the one man who had seen her not as a threat, but as a miracle. By dawn, the first fleet had set sail. Dozens of naval ships crossed the Atlantic, their radars locked on the golden anomaly. Helicopters sliced through storm clouds, and sonar pings echoed like heartbeats across the deep. The Dre Corporation had secretly armed them with experimental tech, Lucien's final designs twisted into weapons. He built machines to understand the ocean, Narina whispered bitterly as she watched from below. Now they use them to cage it. The surface shimmered with shadows of steel, missiles, drones, and deep-water torpedoes. A mechanical army meant to face a goddess. Morel appeared beside her, his voice low. Do you still love them? She didn't answer. Instead, she closed her eyes, spreading her fingers through the water. Love doesn't matter anymore, she said, but mercy does. The sea trembled. Across the waves, a golden mist began to rise, her call to every creature of the deep. The ocean was waking. From the Mariana to the Mediterranean, the ocean stirred. Wells sang in unison. Schools of glowing fish moved as one body, forming vast patterns beneath the fleets. Storms gathered without wind. Submarines lost signal. The admirals above watched their monitors flicker into static as something vast shifted below. Then the water exploded upward, a towering wave shaped like a woman's silhouette. Narina rose with it, her hair swirling like molten threads, her voice echoing across miles. Return to your shores. The sea remembers kindness, but it also remembers cruelty. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to listen, but then came the reply, missiles streaking through the air, slicing through the storm toward her glow. She raised her hand, and the ocean swallowed them whole. The impact lit the waves like fire. Every creature roared in unison. The war of tides had begun. For 3 days and nights, the sea raged. Ships were tossed into whirlpools, engines burned out, and aircraft fell from the clouds. Narina moved through the chaos like a living current, protecting what she could, punishing what she must. The deep court fought beside her, summoning tempests older than humankind. "They'll never stop," Morel shouted over the roar of thunder. "Then neither will I," she cried. Yet every act of defense drained her, every wave tore another piece of her heart. Through the wreckage, she caught sight of one burning ship, its insignia familiar, Dre. Her breath hitched. No! She dove through the storm, ripping open the hull. Inside, she found machines designed in Lucien's handwriting, his blueprints, his genius, turned to war. For the first time since his death, her fury burned brighter than her grief. "You twisted his dream," she whispered, her voice trembling with power. "Now you'll feel his wrath." By the 4th night, the ocean was bleeding gold. Nerina hovered at the heart of the storm, surrounded by fire and thunder, her glow dimming. "Enough," Morel pleaded. "The sea cannot hold this rage." She closed her eyes, hearing faint echoes, Lucien's voice, soft and warm. "Don't let them turn your heart to stone." Her chest ached. "I can't stop now. They'll destroy everything." Morel shook his head. "And if you destroy them first, what will be left of you?" The words struck deeper than any blade. She looked toward the horizon where the last fleet trembled before her. Slowly, she lowered her hands. The waves stilled. The storm quieted. Silence spread, heavy and endless. "Go," she said to the surviving ships. "Tell your world the sea has forgiven you once. Don't make me choose again." Then she sank into the depths, her light fading like a dying sun. The world above was quiet again. For the first time in weeks, the sea lay still, too still. The air smelled of salt and metal, like grief that refused to fade. Ships drifted aimlessly, their decks covered in ash and silence. The survivors whispered of what they saw. A golden woman rising from the storm, her eyes bright as suns, her voice louder than thunder. Some called her a goddess, others called her a curse, but no one dared to speak her name aloud. Deep below, Nerina floated in the ruins of her own light. Her once golden glow was now dim blue, flickering like a dying ember. She could still taste the fire of war in her throat. "It's over," Morel said softly, his face drawn with exhaustion. "You saved the ocean." She looked up through the endless water toward the faint gleam of moonlight. "Then why," she whispered, "does it still feel like I've lost everything?" That night, something strange stirred in the deep. A voice. Soft, familiar, like a current speaking in a dream. Nerina turned slowly, her hair floating like strands of starlight. "Who's there?" she breathed. The voice came again, low and broken. "You kept your promise." Her eyes widened. She knew that voice. "Lucien?" The name trembled out of her like a forgotten song. The ocean around her pulsed faintly, glowing gold where it touched her skin. She reached out, trembling. "You're alive?" The current swirled tighter, coiling into a faint human shape.
his outline shimmering, his eyes like echoes of memory. "No," the voice said gently, "but part of me remains. The sea never forgets love that was pure." Narina's heart cracked open. She wanted to touch him, but her fingers passed through light. "I tried to save your world," she whispered. "You did," Lucian's ghost replied. "Now you must save yourself." Lucian's spirit drifted beside her through the glowing ruins of coral, his voice like music carried by the current. He showed her images, his final memories before his ship sank. The letter he never got to send. The last thought he had before the water took him. "You were the only truth I ever knew," he had written. Narina closed her eyes, her tears becoming pearls in the water. "You were never supposed to die for me." The current trembled, wrapping her like an embrace. "Then let my death mean something. The world will come again. When they do, meet them not with rage, but with light. Be what I always saw in you." For a long time, she said nothing. Then softly she whispered, "I'll try." The ocean seemed to exhale. His light began to fade. And Narina, when the tide sings my name, it's me, listening. No one knew how Lucian's ship sank and why Narina, the once queen of anger, became something different that day. She swam through the deep, the sea a salvation for her, a science unsolved for everyone. In secret, Narina rose near a quiet shore, hidden beneath a veil of mist. She watched the humans rebuilding their ships, smaller this time, slower, kinder to the sea. She smiled faintly. "He was right," she murmured. "They're learning." A small boy threw a paper boat into the tide. Narina's magic caught it and carried it back, unbroken. The child gasped, laughter bubbling through the air. She turned away before he could see her face, whispering into the waves, "For you, Lucian, always for you." The tide shimmered gold where her hand touched it, just once, then turned back to silver. That night, the ocean sang. It was not a song of grief or war, but of memory. A lullaby that echoed through every current, every coral, every quiet tide. The humans called it the Song of the Sea. They didn't know it was Narina's voice rising gently through the moonlight, whispering to a ghost who still lingered somewhere in the water. "You showed me what love means. Not power, not possession, just the courage to see someone's soul." Above, the stars glittered like tears frozen in the sky. And beneath them, a faint golden light pulsed once more. Morel watched from the deep and bowed his head. "The ghost in the waves lives on," he murmured. For even though Lucian's body had been lost, his heart had become part of the sea, and the woman who once defied a CEO's arrogance had now become the ocean's eternal queen. The days that followed were calm, too calm, like the world was holding its breath. Narina drifted beneath a soft twilight sea, her light now a muted silver instead of gold. She had done what she swore she'd never do. She'd made peace with the humans who had once hunted her kind. Yet, as the waves settled, a strange emptiness grew inside her. The ocean no longer whispered to her the same way. Its song was softer, fading. Morel noticed it first. "You're changing," he said, his voice low, worried. Narina looked down at her hands. The scales shimmered faintly, then turned transparent, revealing pale human skin beneath.
The sea is letting go of you, Morel murmured. Narina's heart pounded. Letting go? She whispered. Why? Morel's eyes were full of sorrow. Because your purpose here is ending. The ocean grants no crown forever. It's given you a choice. To stay as queen of the deep, or return to the world above. The weight of those words struck harder than any storm. Narina swam to the surface that night, breaking through the waves beneath a sky blazing with stars. She remembered the cruise ship where it all began, the laughter, the arrogance, the way Lucien had first looked at her not with fear, but with wonder. Everything started here, she whispered. The water rippled with golden light, and Lucien's voice echoed faintly. And everything ends with choice. Narina's throat tightened. If she stayed, she would remain immortal, watching centuries pass. If she left, she could walk among humans. But her light, her memory of the deep, and her connection to Lucien's spirit would fade with time. You'll forget him, Morel warned. That's the cost of being human. Narina looked toward the horizon, where the world met the sky. Then maybe forgetting isn't the end, she whispered. Maybe it's the beginning of truly living. The ocean shimmered with millions of glowing creatures, her kin, her kingdom, her legacy. They gathered around her in silence, the deep illuminated with reverence. My queen, Morel said, his voice trembling. We can't lose you. Narina smiled, tears slipping through the water like falling stars. You won't lose me, she said softly. Every tide carries memory. Every song carries light. I will always be part of the sea. The water began to swirl around her, forming a great vortex of gold and silver. Her body lifted as her tail dissolved into mist, transforming into slender legs. Pain shot through her, sharp, human, real. The ocean sang louder, its roar a mix of sorrow and pride. Goodbye, Morel, she whispered. Guard them well. Morel bowed his head. Goodbye, Narina of the golden tides. And with that, she rose through the last curtain of bubbles, her final breath beneath the sea shimmering like a prayer. When she awoke, the sand was warm beneath her skin. The sun rose over the horizon, painting the sky in pinks and oranges. She blinked against the light. So bright, so alive. I can smell salt, wind, and flowers. She touched her chest, half expecting to feel the pull of the ocean, but there was only a steady human heartbeat. I'm alive, she murmured. For the first time, the air burned her lungs, and it was beautiful. In the distance, a small fishing village stirred awake. A young woman offered her a shawl and a smile. Are you all right, miss? She asked, kindly. Narina nodded, though her voice shook. Just finding my way. As the girl led her toward the village, Narina looked back one last time. The sea shimmered faintly, as if waving goodbye. And in the rolling surf, she heard it, a soft whisper carried by the wind. Live well, my love. Days turned to weeks. Narina learned to walk, to speak, to live among humans. She helped fishermen navigate the tides, taught children to listen to the waves, and sang songs no one had ever heard before. The villagers said she was blessed by the sea. They didn't know how true that was. One evening, as the sun sunk low, she walked barefoot along the shore. The golden light reflected in her eyes like memory. She whispered to the horizon, I kept your promise, Lucien. I lived. The tide brushed her feet, warm and gentle, as if answering her. She smiled, tears glimmering like salt pearls. And if the sea ever calls again, I'll be ready. Years passed like tides, quiet, constant, unstoppable. The village grew, and so did its stories. They spoke of the woman who came from the sea, who healed fishermen lost in storms, who never seemed to age though decades rolled by. Nerina kept to herself mostly, living in a small cottage near the cliffs. Every morning she walked barefoot to the shore, whispering to the waves, though no one ever heard what she said. Her hair was silver now, her eyes still bright with that faint, unearthly glow. Sometimes, children followed her, laughing, calling her the Sea Lady. She would smile, offer them seashells, and tell them tales of kingdoms below the waves. Yet, when the sun dipped below the horizon, her gaze always drifted west, to where the ocean swallowed the light. There, she'd press her palm to her chest and whisper softly, "I'm still here, Lucian, still listening." One night, as a storm rolled in, Nerina sensed something different, something alive, familiar, and ancient. The waves churned harder, glowing faintly gold beneath the thunderclouds. Lightning split the sky as she stepped into the water, her shawl clinging to her shoulders. That's when she saw him. A young man struggling against the current, his shipwrecked raft breaking apart. Without thinking, she dove in, old instincts awakening like fire. She moved through the water with a speed she thought she'd forgotten. When she reached him, he looked up, dazed but alive. His eyes, gray with a golden fleck, met hers. The world seemed to stop. "You," he breathed, as if recognizing her from a dream. She froze. His voice, his face, so familiar it hurt. She dragged him to shore, heart pounding. When she finally caught her breath, he whispered, "I don't know why, but I feel like I've known you forever." The storm passed, leaving the world washed clean. Nerina tended to the man's wounds by candlelight in her cottage. His name was Lucan Dre, a marine engineer, a name that made her blood turn to ice and warmth all at once. "Dre," she repeated softly. "Your family?" He nodded weakly. "My great-grandfather founded the Dre Corporation, but I walked away from all that. I wanted to protect the sea, not exploit it." He looked around her home, filled with seashells, coral lamps, and golden trinkets from long ago. "How do you know so much about the ocean?" he asked. She smiled sadly. "It taught me everything I am." When he looked at her again, the light caught in his eyes just right. For a heartbeat, she swore she saw Lucian staring at her back. But when she blinked, it was gone. Only Lucan remained, young, kind, human, and unknowingly carrying the soul of the man she once loved. As days turned into weeks, Lucan recovered and never left. Together they walked the beach, spoke of science and dreams, built small wooden boats for the village children. He loved the ocean the way Lucian had, not as a resource, but as something sacred. Nerina found herself laughing again, something she hadn't done in years. One evening, as the sun sank low, Lucan asked quietly, "Do you believe people can meet more than once in different lives?" Nerina looked toward the waves where golden light shimmered faintly in the dusk. "Yes," she said softly, "the sea never forgets what it loves. It just finds new ways to remember." The wind lifted her hair, and for a moment, the faintest golden mist surrounded them both. Lucan reached for her hand. "Then maybe," he said, smiling gently, "this isn't our first goodbye, it's our second chance." She smiled back, her eyes wet, her heart reborn. Years later, when Nerina's hair had turned completely white, she sat once more by the edge of the sea, Lucan beside her, his arm around her shoulder. The tide glowed gold beneath the moon. "Do you hear that?" he asked.
It's like singing. Narina nodded. It's been singing all along. It just needed a heart that could hear it. She leaned her head against his shoulder, closing her eyes as the waves rolled in, soft and rhythmic. The light of the sea grew brighter, wrapping around them both until the world turned silent. The next morning, the villagers found only 2 sets of footprints leading into the water and none coming back. But sometimes, when the moon is full and the tide glows gold, people swear they see 2 figures dancing in the waves, a woman of light and the man who dared to love her twice. The sea, at last, had dreamed of love again.
Thank you for staying till the end. Please do well to like and subscribe to the channel, and also don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comment. It means a lot to me.